Welcome to South Park City Museum, a 19th century mining boomtown in 21st century Colorado. In today's video, we bring you the Curator's Curiosities, the cure for cancer. Hello, my name is Erin Pulsifer, and I am the curator at South Park City Museum. The museum has over 60,000 artifacts from the 19th and early 20th centuries. Most of these artifacts are day-to-day items, set up as they would have been in homes or businesses. Some artifacts may seem odd to us today, but were pretty standard during their day. Then there are the artifacts which were curious in their day and are even more curious now. The curious item, which we will be looking at today, is on display in the doctor's office exhibit. The building itself was moved from another location in Fairplay to South Park City in 1962. Museum founder Leon Snyder had a special interest in restoring a doctor's office in the museum because Snyder had inherited the antique instruments and medical equipment from his grandfather, Dr. Henry S. Zimrow, who was a surgeon during the Civil War. Mr. Snyder had also advertised for additional medical equipment used by pioneer doctors. The response was surprising, and soon donations came pouring in. Some of the surgical and medical instruments in the collection belong to Dr. J. W. H. Baker, a Colorado doctor. Dr. Baker had started a practice in California during the famous gold rush of 1849. Several years later, he returned to Colorado to raise his family. Dr. Baker's many medical instruments were donated to the museum by his great-grandson, Dr. W. B. Crouch of Colorado Springs. One of the items which belonged to Dr. Baker was this certificate, the cure for cancer. But he wasn't the doctor behind this so-called cure. That was S.R. Chamley, who did business under the name Dr. and Mrs. Chamley and Company. So what is this certificate? It's a very official-looking document, stating that it was a guaranteed cure for cancer, for which the recipient, a Mrs. D. L. Epler, paid $50. Adjusted for inflation, that would be a little over $1,300 today. Have we just rediscovered the cure for cancer in our own collection of medical artifacts? Why hasn't the Chamley name gone down in history as the doctor who cured cancer? Do you think it worked? If you answered no, a gold star for you. No, it absolutely didn't work. So who was this Dr. Chamley, the man behind this particular cure? How could a medical doctor make a profit off a bunk cure? Did he get away with it? Let's take a look.
I will give $1,000 if I fail to cure any cancer or tumor. I treat before it poisons deep glands without knife or pain. No pay until cured. No x-ray or other swindle. An island plant makes the cure. Absolute guarantee.
This ad and others like it ran in newspapers and magazines geared toward women starting in the late 1800s. S.R. Chamley, M.D., advertised his amazing cancer cure, touting its miraculous properties and educating readers that the medical establishment only put cancer patients through painful treatments to make a profit. He calls x-rays a scam and neatly sums up his guaranteed blood purifier as being made from a vague island plant. As it turns out, curing cancer was big business in the late 19th and early 20th century. Several other miracle workers were claiming to do what conventional medicine could not, cure cancer. Chamley and other doctors like him offered cancer cures made from exotic ingredients, preying on the sick, the scared, and those looking for hope. Dr. Kilmer's swamp root not only claimed to cure cancer, but every other ailment imaginable. Patent medicines like these were available to anyone without a prescription. Their ingredients were not regulated or even verified. Chamley and his contemporaries were some of the first people to really harness the power of advertising, and the money came pouring in. Chamley especially targeted women.
A tumor, lump, or sore on the lip, face, or anywhere 6 months is cancer. They never pain until last stage. 130-page book sent free with testimonials of thousands cured at home. Write to them. Any lump in a woman's breast is cancer, and if neglected, it will always poison deep glands in the armpit and kill quickly. Address: Dr. and Mrs. Chamley and Company, Chamley Building, Most Successful Cancer Specialists Living, 201 and 203 North 12th, St. Louis, Missouri. Kindly send to someone with cancer.
Women would seek Chamley's medical advice, and no matter what they were worried about, a wart, a mole, a birthmark, anything was diagnosed as cancer. After reading Chamley's book, which was written using scare tactics designed to convince healthy people that they had cancer, they came to Chamley for help, willing to pay for a cure. The blood purifier, which Chamley advertised, was really just bait to lure patients into his hospital for expensive and dangerous treatments. His ad stating that any lump or mark was cancer brought letters pouring in from patients seeking Chamley's cure. An article in the American Journal of Public Health, published in September of 1917, detailed his methods. Each person were sent identical letters, which were known as scare letters, and were numbered 1, 2, 3, etc. First letter informed the applicant that the case was undoubtedly cancer and urged a personal visit. If this letter failed to bring in the patient, a second letter was mailed, stronger than the first, and these were followed by others, each stronger than the other, until the patient either came in response to them, or it was evident that a personal visit could not be expected, in which a letter was mailed suggesting home treatment, which, while not satisfactory as a personal treatment, would undoubtedly cure the cancer. It seems that Chamley would charge what he thought he could get away with. The certificate from our collection shows the price that Mrs. Epler paid was $50, but there are several accounts of him collecting a $1,000 fee, which, adjusted for inflation, would be over $27,000 today. What happened to the people who opted for home treatment and tried his blood purifier? Did it work? No. And it's not surprising that it didn't work. During an inquest into Chamley's practices, an analysis was done of his blood purifier. It was found to consist of over 90% water and alcohol, with small quantities of iron, strychnine, and saccharin for sweetness. Mrs. Epler purchased the cure on the certificate we have here, and she paid in full. Did she really have cancer? Did Chamley's methods scare her into believing this bogus claim? Chances are, since she was provided with the elaborate certificate, that she was admitted into Chamley's hospital. Did she survive the cure? Unfortunately, we don't know, but her chances were not good. There are cases where women seeking Chamley's help did indeed pass away. Both genuine cancer patients and those who had been duped by Chamley did indeed die, but not from cancer. Chamley's treatments themselves were proving fatal. As reported in the Chicago Tribune on November 12, 1913, Dr. Chamley had one such patient in Mrs. Sarah J. St. Clair, an old and respected resident of Valparaiso, Indiana. Mrs. St. Clair lies beneath a headstone now. Chamley is charged with having put her there. Mrs. St. Clair had sought the advice of her local doctor and was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was told that there was no cure, the only treatment being a radical mastectomy. This would have called for the removal of her breast, underlying chest muscle, and lymph nodes, which may or may not have saved her life. So it's easy to see that when offered an alternative by Chamley's booklet, backed up by his claims of success and guarantee, that Mrs. St. Clair made the decision to trust him with her life. Her doctor stated that this patient was evidently greatly depressed from what I told her, and that night read in a Chicago newspaper the advertisement of a Dr. Chamley offering a guarantee of cure. He went to Chicago, and after some negotiations, during which time the price was reduced from $1,000 to $100, agreed to take the treatment. This patient entered the institution on May 19th and was discharged on June 2nd, believing herself cured. When she returned to Valparaiso, I again called to see her, but what I saw then made my blood run cold to think that in a city like Chicago, such hideous surgery could be allowed to go unpunished. The entire right breast had been sloughed away by the use of arsenic compounds, and a deep incision had been made in the axilla, evidently with some such instrument as a pair of shears. Both wounds were packed full of cloths smeared with some dirty greenish ointment. Evidently, no attempt had been made to observe the simplest rule of asepsis, and the patient was, at the time, suffering from a general septicemia. She died on June 13th of septicemia, not a victim of cancer, but a victim of the Chamley Cancer Institute, not less surely than if she had been struck down in cold blood for a price. This heartbreaking account seems like it should have been enough to get Chamley charged for his crimes and thrown in jail, especially since Miss St. Clair was not the only person to die from Chamley's cure. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Chamley knew how to avoid prosecution. He had started his cancer practice in Los Angeles in the late 1880s. When the community learned what he was up to, he was run out of town. He moved and set up practice in St. Louis, and it wasn't very long before he was run out of town again. He then moved to Chicago. When he arrived, he applied for a medical license but was denied. Undaunted, Chamley hired a local doctor and used his license to open up. When the word spread about his new hospital, eventually, local health authorities, backed up by law enforcement, surprise, surprise, ran him out of town. He moved to Forest Park, about 10 miles outside of Chicago, and was able to stay there, reopening his hospital. Chamley's practice was perfected after he settled in Forest Park. He used the same system of letters and scare tactics to bring in new patients. They continued to die. He continued advertising in out-of-state newspapers. Chamley had already figured out that if he advertised in out-of-state newspapers, he could attract patients from outside the local jurisdiction. When his patients were near death, they were sent home to die. This drew less attention to his practices because patients were spread out across the country and no local death inquest would take place. So, he was craftily avoiding the law up to this point. What about Chamley's guarantee? How did he avoid that? Pretty simply. If you look at their certificate, you'll notice that the only signature on it is the patient's. In the spot where it looks like it's signed by a doctor, it's signed U.S. Cancer Cure. There's no mention of Chamley or his hospital. Though the certificate says that payment isn't due until the patient was cured, payment was always demanded up front. Then, once a new patient was admitted, she was almost immediately anesthetized, undergoing Chamley's grisly procedure. Then she was wrapped in tight bandages, never given a chance to ask questions or even see the site of her operation. She was, however, presented with the excised tissue preserved in alcohol, which Chamley would announce was her cancer. Of course, some of these specimens were cancer, but some were not. If it was cancer, and the patient suffered a relapse, Chamley would ask for a fee for further treatment. If the patient could pay it, he repeated the same process. If she could not, she was sent packing. When Chamley had collected payment from his patients or sold his blood purifier, every guarantee advertised evaporated. He never acknowledged any sort of guarantee in person. When his patients tried to hold him to his word, Chamley consistently evaded prosecution. One of the cases submitted against Chamley was from a victim in Wisconsin who had purchased the cure and used it according to directions, obtaining no benefit, and doubtless relying on the advertised claim, no pay until cured. The unfortunate wrote to Chamley asking for a return of his money. This is the answer he got.
I received your letter this morning and cannot understand the process of your reasoning. When you asked me to refund you the small payment you made for the medicines used in your case, as we did not charge you any fee for our services, therefore we will return you nothing, but if you come down here, you will sure have to purchase a full and complete set of teeth. If you think you can get anything, come down and try it. I haven't even a stool chair in my own name, so if you can pay me a visit in the very near future, please, please. Hoping to meet you face to face in the near future. Yours, I don't think.
The Pure Food and Drug Act was passed in 1906. This eliminated the widely advertised quack cures for cancer, tuberculosis, and other serious diseases. Thereafter, the same preparations were often sold as cures for coughs, colds, pains and aches, and minor complaints. Labels were required to carry information as to content of certain ingredients, warning as to hazards, and in other instances, references to disease that would not be helped by the preparation. This forced Chamley to stop advertising his blood purifier. However, Chamley was undaunted by this development and continued to operate his hospital. Adjusting his ad and letter campaign to comply wasn't difficult, and patients continued to flock to his hospital. Chamley made money hand over fist, so when he was taken to court, he could afford to buy the best legal representation available. His legal team made use of loopholes and obscure laws, and astonishingly, Chamley escaped criminal charges until April of 1917. He was fined $100 and given a suspended sentence of 100 days in the city jail for practicing without a license. Finally, later that year, Chamley and several other quack doctors were taken down, at last, with the help of the U.S. Post Office. He was charged with mail fraud, barring him from using the mail, which was the center of his whole operation. This brought his operation to a crashing halt. After that, Chamley faded into obscurity. He died 3 years later of heart disease, never having spent a single day behind bars. If you would like to see the cure for cancer in person, South Park City Museum is open from May 15th to October 15th every year. The museum welcomes visitors from all over the world. As a nonprofit organization, South Park City survives on the proceeds from ticket sales and private donations. If you'd like to contribute to the restoration and preservation of this amazing place, the link to our donation page is below. If you are interested in history, ghost stories, virtual tours, curiosities, local legends, and more, please hit that subscribe button and make sure to ring the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. What other sorts of videos would you like to see on this channel? Have you been to South Park City and have a favorite building? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up. We'll see you next time.